Micah chapter 5. Now muster your troops, O daughters of troops. Siege is laid against us. With a rod they strike the judge of Israel on the cheek. But you, O Bethlehem and Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days. Therefore he shall give them up until the time when she who is in labor has given birth. Then the rest of his brothers shall return to the people of Israel. And he shall stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they shall dwell secure, for now he shall be great to the ends of the earth, and he shall be their peace. When the Assyrian comes into our land and tread in our palaces, then we will raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 princes of man. They shall shepherd the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod as its entrance. And he shall deliver us from the Assyrian when he comes into our land and tread within our borders. So as I mentioned about the book of Micah, which most of people are not familiar with this book, because it's not the types of book that you hear from Sunday preaching, because it's not a common books or common topics that people usually talk about. But we're not actually limited to the one subject or one particular of books, but we're just covering book to book from the beginning of the books to the end of the books. So as we go through this Micah, and we kind of see why God is keep sending his prophets to the land of the Judah and Israel, and keep warning them about their behaviors and what they're doing wrong and how they're not reading God's message. So we're trying to understand what is God's concerns are and how he sees Israel as well as in Judah. When we actually see that God is keeps sending many prophets, that means that times are wicked, times are bad. Because God is keeps sending them or warning them. The reason is not to really strike the Israel or Judah. That's not the heart of God. God wants to save. God wants people to return to God. God does not want to destroy them at all. That's why God is keep warning them. It's like we're in danger, right? And then we hear the alarm sound go off. And then alarm sound is going on because we're warning people. There's something is happening. You need to evacuate from where you are because you're in danger. And if people hears the alarm and if people hears the warnings, and if they don't evacuate, and if they don't do anything, if they don't take any actions, obviously the consequences, you may die because of that disaster that might come upon you. God is a keep warning Israel and Judah through the prophets, and then keep telling them and warning them what is coming. But people are just completely ignoring God. There are a few reasons why people are just ignoring God, because number one, from their perspective, it's in peace. Everything is going well. The countries are secure. Their business is going well. Their life is prospers. Everything seems to be going right from their perspective. What they don't see is what is coming. What is coming is not what they're seeing. And God is telling them, it doesn't matter what you're seeing today, but Judgment Day is coming. Please, don't stay there. Don't be just destroyed. Just listen to me and come back to me. And that's the kind of warning that God is actually keep telling them. And then from chapter 1 to chapter 4, God is actually talking about how they're behaving and just kind of like why God is saying what he's saying and how you're going to be destroyed and warning them. But people are not listening. But after God mentioned about the judgment day and how they will be destroyed, now God is talking about how he is going to restore. So when you look at the chapter 5 and verse 2 specifically, but you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth in from of old, from ancient day. This particular prophecy was referenced in New Testament. Let's take a look at where it was actually referenced in New Testament. This time we're going to go to Matthew. Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 2. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him, and assembling all the chief priests and scribe of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who shall shepherd my people Israel. This prophecy is the prophecy that you just saw from Micah. So some may say, like, wait a second, what we just read in Micah and what we just read in Matthew seems to be a little bit different. And why is it there's a discrepancy between the two verses? This is one thing you have to understand. In Jesus' time, after the fall of Israel and Judah, which happened, Israel was destroyed by the Assyrian in BC 721. And Judah was destroyed in BC 586. And then when both of the country was completely destroyed, and then God actually, restored them after Babylonian Empire was completely destroyed by the Persian, right? Cyrus is the one who actually just released every Israelites to go back to their country. So after they came back to Judea, history goes on. But later on, what happened was the whole world was a kind of like emerged into Hellenism, which is after the Alexander the Great was conquered the whole world in Europe and the Asia, and he pretty much preached that he was the ambassadors of Hellenism, which is the God of Greeks, the teachings of the philosophies and so forth. So wherever he was conquering, he was the preaching, he was teaching people, and people are just kind of like immersed into the Hellenism. When that happened, even with people of Judah, starts to forget about their own language. They used to actually speak their own language. They actually, writing and reading in their own language. But because the Hellenism was just immersed in, entire Europe and Asia area, everybody changed their name to be like Greeks at the time. And people are forgetting. Like for our, for immigrants, or when their children come and it was born in this country, they start to forget their mother's tongue. They forgot their the ancestors' language. They don't speak. They don't read. They just forget their identity. So they kind of emerged into the American culture, right? Same thing happening at the time. So what happened was the young generations in BC 300, somewhat around the time, people start to forgetting their own language, and they could not read the Torah anymore because they're not using those languages anymore. So people just cannot read the scriptures or the Torah. So what they did was, after Alexander the Great died, one of his general, obviously the kind of like the history kind of split it into 4 generals who actually worked for Alexander, and then they actually kind of divided a different land. So one of the general who took the land of Egypt side, his name was Ptolemy. Ptolemy was the one who actually, brought 72 scribe from Judah to convert the Torah or the Bibles from Hebrew into Greek. So that's the first version of the Bible that was translated from Hebrew to Greek. So you probably heard of the Bible Septuagint. You probably heard that term somewhere, right? Septuagint is actually, that's how it started. Okay? So many of the Bibles that you actually see or actually translated is actually from Septuagint Bible. All right? So at the time when Jesus came in New Testament, all the Bible verses are referenced from this Septuagint Bible. And everything that you see here was referenced that book. But because it was a translated version from the Hebrew version, obviously there is a lost in translation, and there's some different nuance from the Hebrew version of the Bible versus the Greek version of the Bible. Okay? So when you actually see some of the Bible references in the New Testament, which we just saw in Matthew chapter 2, versus the real Hebrew version of the Bible, there is a slightly difference. But it is the same Bible. And it's there's a slight different nuance, but it's the same thing. So, when Jesus was born, and they knew because of this prophecy was done, in the time of Micah, right? So they knew exactly someone is going to come from Bethlehem in Judah. So coming back to Micah again, chapter 5. But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah. Ephrathah is basically a reference to Judah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah. It's a very, very small clan of Judah. From you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel. Who is that ruler? That is Jesus. That is the Jesus who's going to come. So, this is something you have to understand. Jesus is coming as a very, very, coming from a very small town. And at the same time, he's coming in as just a regular, not so much of like a regular, but, Jesus came to a family of Joseph, which is a very poor family. Right? He did not come to a, he was not born in a palace. So, it is a starting from very small, but he's the one who's going to save everyone. He did not come as a king. as people expected. The reason this wise man came to Judah and Jerusalem is because everyone expected the king of Judah will be born in a palace in Jerusalem, because that's the city. But that's not where he was coming from. So he was born in Bethlehem. So what does a Bethlehem mean? Do you remember what Bethlehem means? Correct. Beit, right? The Beit means house. Lehem is bread. Bethlehem means house of bread. So something you have to actually keep, to learn something, when you ever go to Israel. If you actually see a Beit cafe, means it's a cafe. It means a coffee house, right? Beit means always house. So I live in a small house. Ani gar a bait katan. I live in a very small house. So Beit is always house. So Bethlehem means the house of bread. So when Jesus was, preaching to the people, how did he teach, and what did he teach? He said, "I am the bread from heaven." So he himself referencing himself as a bread. That's the teachings that Jesus actually gave to the people. People actually came to Jesus because they, Jesus fed people, 5,000 people and 4,000 people with bread. So people actually looked for Jesus. They came after him because of the bread. And they said, "Give us this bread." And they were always thinking about the bread that they can eat. But Jesus said, the bread that you're going to eat, but you're going to get starved. But the bread that I'm going to give you is a different kind of bread. Because the bread was referenced by him. So he was connecting that with the manna, which God actually gave to Israel when they were in wilderness. Didn't I provide you with the manna, throughout those 40 years of journey in wilderness? And they were eating every day. But they did not understand what that really means. They were only thinking about the bread that they were eating, because that's what they needed, desperately. Because without bread, what can you eat in wilderness? So when disciples or the apostles, asked Jesus, "Teach us how to pray," and how did Jesus actually taught them? Give us daily bread. Give us daily bread. Okay, so we were thinking about bread. Okay, the bread we're going to eat. The food. Yes, it is the food. But what kind of food was Jesus referencing? It is not the food that we are eating. The food that he was referencing is about him. It's about Jesus. The word. If you don't eat, obviously you'll be starved. So we have to come every day and ask for it. It's not something we don't really, as I told you before, we are so selfish, or we're so when we actually prayed, we don't normally ask for, single bread or daily bread. We usually pray, "Lord, give us bread of month, whole year." We ask for the whole year of bread, rather than a small, daily bread, because we don't want to come back every day, because it's too much work. It's too weary to come back every morning and ask for bread. I don't want to just to come to, imagine you have to actually go to the supermarket every day for your meal. Would you like to do that, or are you just to go to the supermarket and just to buy, go to Costco, and you just buy the bulk of it and store it in your storage room, and so I don't have to go to Costco every day, right? Exactly. Nobody wants to do that, right? Why? Because we don't like to go every day. It's too much work, too much time. It's consuming my time. I'm lazy. I don't want to go every day. But Jesus never said, stored up the bread for months and years. Ask for daily bread, which means you have to come forth and ask the bread every single day. Every single day. This is why when we wake up in the morning, what's the first thing we have to ask? What is the things that you look for when you get up in the morning? Don't you actually just to go walk into the refrigerator and see what kind of food is in there for you to eat, right? That's what you do first. After you wash it, and the first time coming down in the kitchen and you open the fridge or to look for food, right? Isn't that what we do? Exactly. But is that what we do to look for the Word of God? That's not true. We don't really look for God's Word. We can live without it. We don't have to look for God's Word every morning and every day. Why? Because what we really seek is the food for our flesh. Because our flesh gets hungry. We want to fulfill the needs of our body. But what we don't fulfill is the spirit. We don't even feel that our spirit is hungry. We always feel the hungriness of our body. That's why we open the fridge and then try to look for food. And then we're curious, or we want to feel something, so we talk to people, we gain knowledge, and we just always try to look for something to learn. That's the food for our soul. We gain knowledge. That's the food for our soul, because our soul gets hungry, and we we learn the knowledge, and then we enjoy learning things because our soul gets hungry, and we feed it into our soul. But what we don't do, we don't feed into our spirit. Spirit needs a food. The food for the spirit is nothing but the Word of God. But think about it. Have you seen dead body, craving for food? Dead body never crave for food. Never get hungry. Why? Because you're dead. Or when you are actually sleeping, right? When you're in deep sleep, you don't know you're hungry. When you wake up, then you feel hungry. When you're half awake or you're awake, then you feel hungry, right? But when you're in deep sleep, you don't feel hungry. Same thing. What happens is, we look for food because we're living. But when we're in deep sleep, when our spirit is in deep sleep or we're dead, you are never going to look for God's Word because you're dead or you're in deep sleep. You don't feel anything, the hungriness. That's why you don't look for food. The Word of God is not needed for you because you're in deep sleep. As I told you many times, when people get sick, what's the first thing that happens? They lose appetite. When our body gets sick, we lose our appetite, right? When our spirit is very sick, well, we lose our appetite. We don't really look for God's Word. This is why Jesus had to come in Bethlehem as a bread, because we need that bread, and he's coming from the bread as a bread that he wants to give it to us. So we have to eat. Why did Jesus broke the bread? Remember I explained to you why he broke the bread? Because the breaking the bread means the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. That's how he died for us. He torn his body. That's why when Jesus Christ died on the cross, what happened? The veil was torn from the top to bottom. That was representing that Jesus' body was torn in two pieces. All right? So, because this is why Jesus always broke the bread and gave it to his disciples. Eat this bread. This is my flesh. Right? So, coming back here. So, this is the double prophecy. This is the prophecy that Jesus will come in the future. Micah, most likely did not even understand, even though he's the one who was actually giving this prophecy, he did not understand what he really meant. And continue on, and we will know exactly what it means. In verse 3, therefore, he shall give them up until the time when she who is in labor has given birth. Okay. Now, remember, in Old Testament, the woman is referenced as Israel. Woman referencing church in New Testament. And for those of the people who come in, probably don't understand what it means, but for those of you who's been with me for a long time, you won't understand what I mean. So, when woman is in labor, what happened? They're in pain, right? They're in pain. So, there are times this woman will be in pain. Until when? Such time that the deliverer will come. And what happened after he come? Then the rest of his brothers shall return to the people of Israel. Who's coming? Rest of the people. Rest of his brothers shall return to the people of Israel. You are going to hear this is referenced in many different places in a lot of the prophetic books. Excuse me. Because eventually what God will do is he's going to bring the surrounded country. So he brought Assyria and he brought the Babylonians to actually destroy both Israel and Judah. When God actually brought the other countries to destroy the Israel and Judah, did God want to completely destroy them? Is that what God wanted? No, that's not God's heart. The reason we discipline our children is because we want them to be well, not because we want to beat them up, right? The purpose is not just beating people. The purpose is to discipline so they walk on the right path is the reason why we're doing it. God wants Israelites to really learn the lesson and walk on the right path. But since they were not listening, God had to actually, bring the rod and stick to discipline the children. So what God is doing is, I am going to cut this tree. I'm going to cut this tree. This big tree. I'm going to cut this tree. But I'm not going to root it out. I'm not going to pull the roots out of the ground. I'm going to leave this trunk. I will leave the roots so the tree can regrow back. So that last piece is left is the rest of the brothers and rest of the people that God has kept referencing. There will be some people left to restore and regrow. I'm not going to completely destroy Israel. So, as I mentioned, God had promised many things to the Israelites. And especially Deuteronomy chapter 28 mentions about blessings and curse. Right? Life and death, God mentioned. And then if you do this, I will bless you. But if you don't do this, this is the kind of curse you will face. As I mentioned, there are about 14 verses, right, of the blessing. And there's a triple size of the curse. And when you actually just look at, each of the curse, God said, I am going to completely destroy you. I'm going to just remove you from the ground. But if God did what he promised, Israel was destroyed long ago. Right? This is something that I kept reference, many times in our Bible sharing. Some people ask me, do you think God exists? Is God there? One of the things that I actually say this, let me just explain this to you. You're actually seeing, and you actually know God exists just by looking at the country of Israel. Just by looking at Israel, the Jewish people. And then people say, like, what do you mean? When did Israel as a country disappear? When did Israel disappear from the history? Right? So, as I told you before, when was Israel, the north of Israel, was destroyed by Assyrian? BC 721. Right? It was 10 tribes moved up, and that's what made up the north of Israel. Right? Who was the first king of the north of Israel? Jeroboam. Right? Jeroboam was the first king of the north of Israel. Right? And then BC 7021, who was the last king of the north of Israel? Hosea. Right? Hosea was the last king. Right? And last prophet was also Hosea. It's the same name. Last king, last prophet of north of Israel was Hosea. What about the south of Judah? Who was the first king? Rehoboam, right? Son of Solomon. Rehoboam was the king. And who was the last king? And when was Israel was destroyed? Who was the who? When was the Judah? Actually, who destroyed the Judah? Yeah, Babylonian destroyed it. And who was the actual last? Who was the last king of the Judah? Zedekiah, right? Zedekiah was the last king of Judah. And when was the Judah was destroyed? BC 586, right? That's when it was destroyed. Since then, country of Israel was disappeared from the history. It was gone. You probably never even heard of it. If you actually know the history, the world history or the European history, Israel was destroyed by Babylonian, and that was the end of it. And there was no more country of Israel existed. Because when Babylonian took over the Israel, it was no longer Israel. It was Babylonian. And then when Persian took over, it was a land of Persia. There's no such country as Israel. There was no king. And after Alexander took over, became Greek. The times of Didochi, same thing. And then when Roman took over, what happened? It was a part of a Roman. So Israel never existed as a country, as an independent country. It was completely destroyed. And then, how do you know actually Israel actually came back? How do we know that Israel came back as the one country? When did they actually Israel came back? It was, oh, it was very close, very close. It's 1948, May 14th. Then, when did Israel disappear from the history? BC 586. And then Israel came back as an independent country back in 1948, May 14th. So how long this country was disappear from the history? Two 2,000 years this country disappear from the history. People just don't know it. Country was disappeared for 2,000 years and came back as one country. People all came back from all over the world, but when they came back, they have the same custom, same religion, same language, same belief, same God. Is that possible? Have you ever heard of any country in human history that country disappeared 2,000 years ago and came back? And they have the same custom and same language and same God and same teaching? Let me tell you, in human history, never existed. Except Israel. Israel is the only country in human history that disappeared 2,000 years ago and came back as one country. Why? Because this was the promise of God. And you are seeing the prophecies being fulfilled. And we're watching it today. But you know what? Still people don't believe. No one believed. No one in human history ever believed that Israel will come back. In times of medieval period, no one believed that this Bible is true. Because the Bible said, I will restore Israel. What are you talking about? This country disappeared like thousands of years ago. What do you mean it's coming back? They're not coming back. No one believed until 1948 that it came back. And I told you, a couple of years ago, remember one of the things that Donald Trump did? One of the big news that I mentioned to you guys about. What did he do? He actually acknowledged that Jerusalem is the true capital of Israel. This is the biggest news. The whole world, it was a big surprise. Because no one ever, in any country, ever, acknowledged that. Because that's why the U.S. Embassy, or all the embassy, was in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem. Because in Jerusalem, it is actually part of the so many different people living in Jerusalem. The Palestinian, territory in Jerusalem, right? So because of people were worrying about there's going to be a war if they declared Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. No, the president of the United States, although every single of them promised, everyone promised, I'm going to acknowledge this, but no one ever did. Trump was the only president of the United States to declare this. I'm going to declare Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Every whole world was like shocked. What? That was a big news. People who really didn't care about Israel obviously didn't care about the news. But this was a worldly news. Everyone shocked. Because this is the promise of God, that I will restore. We are seeing this in our history, but people are not paying attention. People don't care because we're so busy living in our life. We don't really care about what God said. First of all, people don't know what God promised. People don't know what God promised, period. Why? Very simple. People don't know the Bible. People don't read the Bible. People don't know what God said, what He promised. Therefore, even though they're seeing His prophecies are being fulfilled, they either don't know or don't care. I do. Because I'm seeing His promises continue to be filled. There are things that will come that hasn't happened yet, that is described in the Bible. Right? What will come, which is recorded in a lot of the places in Revelation, it hasn't happened yet. But you know what? Even though it didn't happen, I believe it will happen. Why? Because He has shown this over thousands of years, showing us all the promise that He made has been fulfilled. Therefore, I know whatever hasn't come will be fulfilled as well. And Micah was about close to 700 BC, and then this promise and prophecy was fulfilled almost 700 years later. All right. Who cares about what was promised 700 years? Right? But Bibles keep telling us. Why do we believe what God promised will be fulfilled? Because He's shown us over and over and over that His promise has been fulfilled. In order for us to know that, obviously we have to know the Scripture in order for us to know it. If you don't, you will never be surprised. You will never know what promise has been fulfilled. Come back. Verse 4. He shall stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they shall dwell secure, for now He shall be great to the ends of the earth. Now, you understand what this is referencing? Obviously, it was Jesus He was referencing. In verse 5, He shall be their peace. He shall be the peace. Is He? Is He really our peace? Absolutely. So, let's take a look at when you turn to Isaiah chapter 9. Isaiah chapter 9. Isaiah chapter 9 as a reference in Jesus Christ. We're going to read verse 1. But there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish. In the former time He brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the latter time He has made glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who walk in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of deep darkness of them has light shone. You have multiplied the nations, you have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divided the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressors, you have broken as on the days of Midian. For every boot of the tramping warrior in battle tumult, and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and the peace, there will be no end. So, Jesus, the Prince of Peace. And then, let's turn to Philippians. Philippians. We're going to read from verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplications with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. What is it saying? The peace of God, which is what you just saw in Isaiah chapter 9 as well. So, Micah said the same thing. He's the peace. He shall be peace. Coming back to Micah again, verse 5. And he shall be their peace. When the Assyrian come into our land, the threads in our palace, then we will rise against him 7 shepherds and 8 princes of men. They shall shepherd the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod as its entrance. The land of Nimrod referenced the Babylonian Empire, by the way. And he shall deliver us from the Assyrian when he comes into our land and thread within our borders. So once you actually get to know this, did God save Israel from the land of Assyria? No, he didn't. He didn't spare them. Assyrian came and pretty much plowed through and destroyed Israel. God did not spare them. God let the Assyrian destroy them completely. But not all. Not all. Remnant. The remaining people will grow back. Verse 7. Then the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many people. This is the one. Remember this. You will continue to hear and see this reference. Remnant. The remnant is always going to be referenced. In the midst of many people, like dew from the Lord, like showers on the grass, which delay not for a man, nor wait for a children of man. And the remnant of Jacob shall be among the nations, in the midst of many people, like a lion among the beast of the forest, like a young lion among the flocks of a sheep, which, when it goes through, tread down, and tears in pieces, and there's none to deliver. Your hand shall be lifted up over your adversaries, and all your enemies shall be cut off. And in that day, declared the Lord, I will cut off your horses from among you, and will destroy your chariots. And I will cut off the cities of your land, and throw down all your strongholds. And I will cut off sorcerers from your hand, and you shall have no more tellers of fortunes. I will cut off your carved image and your pillars from among you, and you shall bow down no more to the work of your hands. And I will root out your Asherah image from among you, and destroy your cities. And in angers and wrath I will execute vengeance on the nations that did not obey. So here's the things that people see. When people read Old Testament, all they see is God is always mad and destroying this and destroying peoples, and he's always furious and he's just like always mad. So the kind of impressions that most of people when they read the Old Testament is scary God. He's always mad, right? He's killing people. That's all people see. What they don't see, why God was doing what he was doing. No one is reading God's heart at all. Why is he doing this? They don't really care about why they did it. So here's the kind of news that we hear. Someone kills someone. Wow, he killed someone. He's a murderer. Right? But do you know the history? Why that person killed that person? Are you curious to know what really happened? I don't know if you I don't know if you actually know the kind of like war movie. War movies, not most of women don't really watch. Obviously, for a man, like guys like Tony is the one who's probably watching those war movies. Probably. There's the one of the Dutch movie. There's one of the Dutch movie, the war movie. But this is a slightly different kind of a war movie than normal war movie. The title of the movie was "A War Last Mission," I believe that was the movie. But it is not a comment to the people, because this is Dutch movie. And what this movie is actually describing is that there is the soldiers who actually come to Afghanistan, and they're kind of securing the small towns from Taliban. And there's all kinds of like situations they're in, and one of his actually soldiers got shot in his neck, and the commander of that the camp was actually ordered, and he actually asked for the airstrike. And then when he actually called for help to have an airstrike, and then in 2 minutes there's like airstrike happens, and then they were able to actually pull all his soldiers out of that camp, and then survived. When he came back, and his commander actually came with the lawyer and said, "You're accused." So he said, why am I accused? And now he was actually dismissed from the missions, and he came back home. And he was actually brought to the court. The reason that he was brought to court was because he did not clearly see the enemies from that side, and then he ordered the airstrike to happen. And when the airstrike happened, there was a civilian was actually killed during that attack. So he was accused that he actually killed the civilians without understanding the proper situations, and he just like ordered the airstrike to happen. So during that court, he was going through all kinds of like, the emotional situations with his families, with the peoples and himself, and going through multiple, it just talks about the soldiers who came back from the war, and he's going through the difficult time to going through this, the whole situations. Later on, the verdict came. But during that, his lawyers and the government was actually fighting each other. And the lawyers from the government was saying, I understand his situations, but he ordered an airstrike without clearly understanding or seeing the enemy was coming from that side. And this is mapped into the civilian area, and he knew it, and he still ordered the airstrike to happen. So he supposed to be sentenced. And then his lawyer was actually fighting back. You don't understand what situations we're in, right? Because from our perspective, through the entire movie, you can see exactly what happened, right? But from the lawyer's perspective, they have not seen the situations. They don't understand exactly what was going on. They could only see the pictures and the recordings, and that's all they could see. But they don't understand the situations they were in. They're in a situation all to be killed. What decision can you make at that point? Are you in a really, normal situations you can think straight in the situations like that when the bullets are coming, it's like bombing is happening all over the place and your people are dying right next to you? You can't think straight. But people don't think about that. People only think about it, factual stuff, and they think they're like very look at it from the law perspective or international laws. That's all they see. They don't try to understand the situations they were in and why they had to do what they had to do. And then the whole movie actually is shown. It's kind of, when people see the war movie, it's like it's sort of boring. But, this is like emotional challenges the soldiers are going through. And the people who doesn't understand the situations of the war and how they determine and how they see things. And as I was watching that movie a while ago, it just kind of touched me. Like, you're right. We look at the Bible. We only look at it from the, from third-party perspective, why God struck the Israel and Judah. That's all we see. What we don't see is why God is striking the Israel and Judah. For what purpose? What is he trying to do with that? Is what we don't see. If you really read it carefully, the tears and despise, abandonness, treason, and all this stuff that happened to God, I think we as a human, if you were God, we would have done worse than God. We would have destroyed Israel completely if I were God. Have you seen the movie, another movie, I'm trying to remember exactly what that movie was, a comedy movie. Jim Carrey, what was the movie? Something Almighty. God Almighty, I think. Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty, yeah. Yeah, remember the Bruce Almighty, right? If he became a god and he complained, right, to God's like, what's up, God? Why are you doing this, right? You're God. You should be doing a better job, right?
Is that really?
Why don't you do it, right? If you could do a better job, then why don't you do it? Same thing. What do you think we would have done if it were God? I think the whole world will be in disaster. Whole world will be in disaster. Because we don't know how to manage it. What we don't see is we don't see it from God's perspective. we always see from our own perspective why God actually hit the Israel and Judah. But when you look, when you peel off and inside, you will see how God really feels. God did not want to do this, but he just kept warning them and just keep telling them not to do it. Be patient and patient and patient, and got to the point and said, no more. Have the discipline. I have to do this. If you're cancer patient, right? What do? At some point, you have to start the process. You can't let it happen because doctor knows you're going to die, but doctor has to do something about it, right? So it's going to be a painful process. Chemotherapy is not an easy thing for people can bear. But you know what? This is the only chance we have. I have to do everything what I can to bring you back to life. I don't want you to die. Same thing. So, God is saying, I'm going to cut off this, cut off that, because that's what you're doing. So let me ask you this. When did Israelites stop worshiping Azra or Baal or any type of idols? Do you have any idea when Jewish or the Israelites stopped worshiping the idols or Baals or like Azra's or like all kinds of idols that they actually worship? And throughout the entire Old Testament, you will see they're worshiping idols, right? Through hundreds of years. When did they stop? Well, you see, this is how much we don't know about the Bible. They completely stopped ever since they came back from Babylonia. That's when they stopped. Why did they stop? What did they learn? Remember the book of Daniel? Nebuchadnezzar was actually built a very big idols, right? Top was the gold, silvers, right? Bronze, mixed with, the irons and clays and stuff, right? And then he ordered Daniel's friend to bow down before that idols, and they refused to worship that. Right? I can't. And then he warned them, if you don't bow down, I'm going to throw you into the fiery fire. And their response was what? Even if you throw us into the fire, God will protect us. Even if he doesn't, I still can't bow down before this idol. Since then, they learned the hard lesson. What did they learn? Idol is nothing. Idol is not to be worshipped. So when they came back from Babylonia, when Cyrus let the Israelites go back and then rebuild their temple, when you look at some of the books, Ezra, Nehemiah, when you actually look at the Haggai, right, Esther's, when you read those books, you will never find them worshiping the idols. They stopped worshiping the idols since then. They learned a hard lesson. But until Israel and Judah was completely destroyed, they were continued to worship the idols. God wanted to stop them. Don't do it. Don't do it. But they just kept doing it. They just completely ignore. It's like your mom and your dad was to keep telling you, like, don't do this. Don't do this. And you just keep doing it and keep doing it. What happened? What is the consequence you face after that? You get slapped at it, right? Why? Because you just ignore it. Warned you. I warned you. Stop doing this. Stop doing this. Well, that's exactly what God did. All right. Coming back, chapter 6. Hear what the Lord says. Arise, plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, you mountains, the indictment of the Lord, and you enduring foundations of the earth. For the Lord has an indictment against his people, and he will contend with Israel. O my people, what have I done to you? How have I wearied you? Answer me. Now, I want you to listen to this very carefully, what God is saying. Arise, plead your case before the mountain. Talk to me. Make your case. Tell me. Let's talk about this. Do you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing? Make a case. Why you shouldn't be judged. Talk to me. God is so mad and giving them a chance to come and reason with God. Tell me. The mountain isn't listening. The whole nature isn't listening, except the Israelites. Talk to the mountain and let the hills hear your voice. Speak. Hear you mountains, the indictment of the Lord. And you enduring foundation of the earth, for the Lord has an indictment against his people, and he will contend with Israel. He will dispute. Reason with me. O people, what have I done to you that you don't listen to me? Did I do anything wrong to you? Haven't I blessed you all these years? Didn't I make all the promises that you will be blessed if you follow my way and abandon all these idols? When did I tell you this? How many years? Thousands of years. Ever since I actually gave the law to Moses, and I told you, and I warned you, but you kept ignoring me. I kept sending you the prophets, warning you not to do this, but you keep ignoring me. You despise me. You turn back on me. But what do? They do what they want. All they care about is bless me. That's all they care. Bless us, bless us, bless us. But what they don't do is they don't listen to any of the things that God said. If your child never listens to you, do you want to do something for your child? Or if you want to do something to your child that when they listen to you, of course you always want to do something, but when your child is just always, fight against you, they're not listening to your ways, and you don't want to give anything to that child. Not because you don't love, because you don't behave. Why do you think God think or feel differently than us? This is the kind of things that we have to learn. What is God's heart? He's crying. Please don't do this. Don't let me do this. And he's crying and he's just telling, please, just listen to me. I don't want to hit you. I don't want to discipline you, so just listen to me. And just keep saying with the words, but they just completely ignores him. And God had no choice. Because I cannot let you continue doing this. So God is saying, "Oh my people, what have I done wrong to you? How have I wearied you? Answer me. Please tell me." God is just keep asking, what did I do wrong? I loved you. I gave you everything you wanted. But you're not listening to me. This is a really important verse. This is the part of things that you have to really just to put a underlines and sort of highlight this. This is the God's heart. He's been so painful. "For I brought you up from the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery, and I sent before you Moses, Aaron's, Miriam's. O my people, remember what Balak king of Moab devised, and what Balaam the son of Beor answered him, what happened from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the righteous acts of the Lord." You look at the history. Haven't I done right things to you, to save you from slavery, and made you a country? And I kept you, protect you from all this? In return, you're despising me, ignoring me, not listening to me. Why people are not seeing God's heart? Why people are not seeing his cry? Why people are not seeing his pain and scars? All they care about is why God is hitting us. Why God is disciplining us. That's the part people are not seeing. People are not seeing God's cry. Now, pay attention from verse 6 through 8. This is what God is requiring of Israel. "With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offering, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oils? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for the sins of my soul? Has he told you, O man, what is good? What does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God?" Let me tell you, we go to church every Sunday, or we just, worship the Lord on Sunday. How many times I have to tell you, do you think God is happy because you're sitting in the sanctuary in church, sitting there for, a little over an hour? And then you say, well, I sang the praise. I gave the offering. What else do you want from my life? I did what I had to do. I regularly go to church. I worship. Time to time I pray. I've done my duty. Is that what God is requiring of you? Far from it. Far, far from it. Sometimes I say this and people think that I'm crazy, but I will tell you anyway. When Christians go to church on every Sunday, worship, it could mean nothing to God. Show me in everywhere and anywhere in the Bible that God commanded us that we must be in church every Sunday. Worship the Lord. If you find anywhere in the Bible, please show me. I looked through the entire Bible. None. None. Is that why God is asking you to just come to church every Sunday and worship the Lord? But Monday through Saturday you have no heart for God? That's not what God wants. That's very far from what God wants. What God wants from us is love for Him. What is the command? Love your Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. That's what God wants. Love Him. And worship the Lord with a loving heart. God does not want to burn the animals. That's not what God is asking. What good is it if you actually burn all these animals and you brought all this, the Sabbath and all this good stuff that you're doing? It means nothing to me, is what God is saying. What God wants is not burnt offering. It's not the wine God wants. It's not the money God wants. What God wants from us is our heart. Do we truly have a heart for the Lord? Do we truly love the Lord? If we don't have that heart, whatever we're doing is not something that God wants. This is what Micah is saying. Let's read it again. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before Him with burnt offering, with calf a year old? Is that what God wants? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams? With tens of rivers of oil? Is that what God wants? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body, for the sin of my soul? Is that what God wants? He has told you what God wants. Oh man, what is good? What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. So, let me ask you this. What does that mean by humbly walking with the Lord? What does that mean? What does that mean by walking with the Lord? Let's take a look at Genesis for a second. Genesis, we're going to turn to chapter 5. Chapter 5, we're going to read from 21 and on. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he fathered Methuselah. Enoch walked with God after he fathered Methuselah 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Though all the days of Enoch were 365 years, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Enoch walked with the Lord, that God actually took him. So the whoever walks with the Lord is the one God takes it. So then, continue on. Chapter 6. Verse 9. These are the generation of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generations. Noah walked with God. Noah also walked with God. So how did he walk with the God? What did he do? Verse 22. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. That's how you walk with the Lord. Noah obeyed God's word. Instead of adding his ideas, instead of doing what he wants, instead he did what God told him to do. In order for you to do this, first of all, you have to listen to God's word first. And you have to know what God said. How can you know what God said? Only through the word. That means you must know the words. If you don't know the words, there's no way that you will obey or listen or walk with the Lord. You must know God's word first. And then you have to do what God said. That's how you're walking with the Lord. If you don't know God's word, there's no way you'll be able to walk with the Lord. This is why we're coming together here and learning God's word. What does that really mean? How can I walk with the Lord? Continue on. Verse 9. The voice of the Lord cries to the city. And it is a sound wisdom to fear your name. Hear of the rod and of him who appointed it. Can I forget any longer the treasures of wickedness in the house of the wicked, and the scant measure that is accursed? Shall I acquit the man with wicked scales, and with the bag of deceitful weights? Your rich men are full of violence. Your inhabitants speak lies, and your tongue is deceitful in their mouth. Therefore I strike you with a grievous blow, making you desolate because of your sins. You shall eat, but not be satisfied, and there shall be hunger within you. You shall put away, but not preserve. And what you preserve, I will give it to the sword. You shall sow, but not reap. You shall thread olives, but not anoint yourself with oil. You shall thread grapes, but not drink wine. For you have kept the statute of Omri and all the works of the house of Ahab. And you have walked in their counsels, that I may make you a desolation, and your inhabitants a hissing. So you shall bear the scorn of my people. So this is the things that God is saying. Because you're not listening to me, I'm going to remove all your idols. And you will harvest, but you're not going to eat. I'm going to let you do all this. You will not benefit at all. Because I'm going to give it to someone else. You will never enjoy it. This is the part that God has kept crying out for. He's warning them. even after this warning, people didn't care. As you saw from the previous chapter, they said, don't prophesize all this. I don't want to hear. Talk about wine. I will listen. But when you started to talk about repent, I don't want to hear any of it. Chapter 7. Woe to me, for I have become as when the summer fruit has been gathered, and when the grape have been gleaned, there is no cluster to eat, no first arrived fig that my soul desire. The godly has perished from the earth, and there's no one upright among mankind. They all lie in wait for blood, and each hunts for others with a net. Their hands are on what is evil, and do it well. With their hands, when it comes to evil things and wicked things, they're doing it very well. God does not have to tell them. They do it very, very well. God does not have to teach them how to do it. They already know and do it very well. The beast of them is like briar, the most upright of them a thorn hedge. The day of your watchman, of your punishment has come. This is the day that I mentioned. The day of the Lord, the judgment day, is coming. As punishment has come. This is when Jesus is going to, God is going to discipline Israel and Judah. Put no trust in a neighbor. Have no confidence in a friend. Let me talk about this for a moment. You see, you have to trust me for everything what I tell you. Okay? You have to trust me for everything what I tell you. You trust me? Exactly. No. You don't trust me. And you should not trust me. You should never trust me. You know why? Men are not to be trusted. This is where the problem comes. We trust people. We tell people to trust me. But you know what? Can you trust yourself? We can't trust ourselves. We're not reliable. Right? If we know ourselves we're not reliable, how can you tell other people to trust me? I can't even trust myself. How can I tell someone to trust me? If I tell you trust me, but I don't trust myself, that's a full lie. Isn't it? I'm telling you, I can't trust myself. I'm so weak. This is what Bible's teaching us. Men are not to be trusted. Men are to be what? To be loved. Forgive. Men are never to be trusted. Bible never taught us to trust a man. Bible always taught us trust in the Lord. We as Christians put all our trust in the Lord. God does not change. We can trust Him. We cannot trust any one of us. Even me. This is what it's saying. Put no trust in a neighbor, have no confidence in a friend. Unfortunately. Let's take a look at some other places. Let's take a look at Psalm 146. Psalm 146. We're going to read from verse 3. Put not your trust in prince, in a son of man in whom there is no salvation. When his breath departs, he returns to the earth. On that very day his plan perish. Blessed is he who help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord his God. Do not put your trust in prince. Because they have a power, because they're at the situations where they can actually exercise their authority, do not put your trust and faith in them. Because they're nothing more than a dust. Let's take a look at Isaiah chapter 2. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 22. Stop regarding man. In whole nostril is breath, for of what account is he? Stop regarding man. Don't trust a man. Men are not to be trusted. Men are to be loved, forgiven, and cared for. Where do you put your trust? In the Lord. No one else. This is why we always disappoint, because we put our trust and faith in someone, and if the person does not act the way I trusted and believed, and we get disappointment. And then we say, how could you? But as I said before, this is what the Bible has kept telling us. Do not trust anyone. Do not put your faith in anyone, but in the Lord. Continue on, coming back to Micah. Guard the door of your mouth from her who lies in your arms. This is what we do. We always lie. For the son treats the father with contempt. The daughter rise up against her mother. The daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are the man of his own house. Whoa. My enemies are my brothers and sisters and my mother and fathers and in-laws and all my family members. Yeah. Doesn't this actually remind us something? Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter 10. We're going to read from verse 34. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a person's enemy will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves a son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses life for my sake will find it. One of the controversial verse. What? Didn't we just talk about he's the Prince of Peace? But what he's telling us is, don't ever think that I actually come to bring the peace, but the sword? Whoa, hold on a second. You said one thing over there, and you're saying something completely different here. Your own contradiction here. Oh. Isn't it? He's saying complete. He said he's a Prince of Peace. But he himself is saying, I didn't bring peace to this world. He brought the sword. And the enemies are within our own family. How's that possible? How many times you actually fight with your husband and your sons and your parents about like believing in the Lord, and how many times they argue back and you got into a fight? Huh? Your friends, right? Sometimes you're just talking to someone who's very, close, and you just having, kind of debate, and you got into like some sort of like hurting their, each one's a feeling because you're talking about the Bibles and talking about God, right? And the other person is talking about there's no God, and they just say like, where is the God? Like they're atheist, right? Well, this is what God is talking about. We're going to get in trouble with our own family. Sometimes convincing our own family is much harder than my neighbor. Because of him, because of the salvation, we're going to get into an argument. But, coming back to Micah, but as for me, I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. No matter what other people do and say, for me and my decision is firmly decided. I will trust in the Lord. Even my family does not trust in the Lord. I will. This is a very similar confessions that Joshua gave. So let's take a look at what Joshua said. Joshua chapter 24. Joshua chapter 24. We're going to read from verse 14. Now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. And if it is evil in your eye to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your fathers served in the regions beyond the river, or the God of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That was the confession of Joshua. You people of Israel, if you think believing in your own God, not our God, or the God of Amorites, God of all the idols that you worship, if you think that is better than our God, you go ahead and do what you need. But you know what? For me and for my family, I will put all my trust and I will only worship my Lord. And this is the confession of the Christians. No matter what happened, Lord is my shepherd. Lord is my rock. Lord is my refuge. I have no one to go to but you, Lord. That should be our confession. We put our trust and faith in the Lord. Continue on. Rejoice not over me, O my enemy. When I fall, I shall rise. When I sit in the darkness, the Lord will be the light to me. This is something you have to understand. Even if you're very good Christians, you will fall. I guarantee you will fall. You will lose the battle. But you know what? You will rise up again. You will lose the battle today, but you will rise up again. And you will fight back because God will help you to come back and revive you. This is the part. Don't ever try to be perfect. We have to acknowledge that we're weak. We're nobody. And we are helpless. This is why we come to the Lord. Lord, this is who I am. I'm evil. I'm wicked. This is why I come to you, Lord, to help us. Because without you, I will always lose everything. Because you are holding my hands, because you're pulling me out of the mud pit, I can live. Although everybody fall, I have a hope in you that you will raise me up. This is the hope we have. This is the faith. I will bear the indignations of the Lord, because I have sinned against him, until he please my cause, and excuse judgment for me. He will bring me out of the light. I shall look upon his vindication. Remember, God is the only light when we're in darkness. He's my light. Then my enemies will see, and shame will cover her, who said to me, Where is the Lord your God? My eyes will look upon her. Now she will be trampled down like the mire of the streets. A day for the building of your walls. In that day the boundaries shall be far extended. In that day they will come to you from Assyria and the city of Egypt, and from Egypt to the river, from the sea to sea, and from mountain to mountain. But the earth will be desolate because of its inhabitants, for the fruit of their deeds. Shepherd your people with your staff. Remember, when Moses was holding up his staff, what did God say? Throw your staff. Moses, when he was a Midianite, he's with the Midianites and shepherding the lambs, all he got was his staff. That's the only thing he can trust and rely on. But God told him to throw it out. When he threw it out, what happened to that staff? Became a snake. And God told him to hold it back. When he actually, hold the tail, that it became a staff again. What happened to that staff now? The staff of Moses became the staff of God. Why? The staff represent the cross that Jesus Christ, who died on us, who's going to give us the strength. Now we're holding on. His staff, not my staff. Shepherd your people with your staff, which is the staff of the Lord. The flock of your inheritance, who dwell along in a forest, in the midst of the garden land. Let them gaze in Bashan and Gilead, as in the days of old. As in the days when you come out of the land of Egypt, I will show them marvelous things. The nations shall see and be shamed of all their might. They shall lay their hands on their mouths. Their ears shall be deaf. They shall lick the dust like a serpent, like the crawling things of the earth. They shall come trembling out of their strongholds. They shall turn in dread to the Lord our God, and they shall be in fear of you. Why do we learn the Bible? To learn to fear the Lord. Who is like you? This is the meaning of the name Micah. Micah means who is a God like you. In Hebrew word, me is who. And means, it's like hallelujah or that means what? Jehovah. Right? Hosea. Right? Joshua. That means all means Jehovah. Right? So K was like. So that makes Micah means who is like who is a God like you. So the name of the prophet and name of the book itself talks about the theme of this book itself. Who is like our God, pardoning iniquity and passing over transgressions for the remnant of his inheritance? He does not retain his anger forever, because he delights in steadfast love. This is something you need to keep in mind. When he gets angry, he's not angry forever, but he forgives because of his steadfast love. This is why I kept telling, God is not disciplined because he hates and wants to destroy people, because he loves his own people. He will again have a compassion on us. He will tread our iniquities underfoot. You will cast all our sins into the depth of the seas. How did he do it? When Jesus Christ died on the cross and resurrected, he conquered the sin and gave us a salvation. You will show faithfulness of Jacob and steadfast love to Abraham. You have sworn to our fathers from the days of old. Because God promised he will restore us and he will love us. And that promise I hold on to throughout my life. And I hope you do too. Any questions about Micah?